Coming up on Lawmakers. The Lieutenant Governor says his previous legislation on DNA evidence is bearing fruit. Democrats still think they have a strong legal case with their reapportionment map, despite the latest out of D.C. And Mwandi Lawson looks at cutbacks in the Department of Corrections and Juvenile Justice.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers for Tuesday, January 29th. Here are your hosts, Susan Hoffman and Gerald Bryan.
Good evening, everybody. Also on tonight's broadcast, a live interview with House Minority Leader Lynn Westmoreland.
And a measure to let teens try it as adults get parole. But our lead story, the governor's cancer initiative.
Breast cancer is the second leading cause of death among women in Georgia. But steps are being made to aid the cause. Last year, Governor Barnes created the Georgia Cancer Coalition to fight all kinds of cancer. And this morning announced some new ways Georgia is fighting this horrible disease. Lawmakers David Zelski has our story.
The governor said the best way to prevent cancer is to find it early. Breast cancer detected in the early stages gives the victim a 95% chance of survival. Odds he wants every woman to have when facing this disease.
Through grants made available by the Georgia Cancer Coalition, the Department of Community Health, and the Department of Human Resources, 14 public health agencies and hospitals serving 64 of Georgia's rural counties will receive $1.7 million in state grants for cancer screening and prevention. And with additional matching funds, that total comes to $3.4 million. And I have another exciting announcement to make, and that is the creation of a license tag that will help us fight breast cancer in Georgia.
Now, this tag is not what the actual tag's going to look like, more so an idea. It's going to cost a little bit more than every regular license plate, but going towards a good cause.
Well, what it really does is two things. One is every time you see one of these tags, women are going to be reminded that mammography matters, that it's important to do the breast exams, that breast cancer is a reality for too many Georgians. And then secondly, it will provide funds for our sisters for whom care is difficult because of cost.
The Georgia Cancer Coalition is looking to gain up to $1 billion in private grants and tobacco settlement funds. Executive Director Russ Toll says this step forward in breast cancer screening is a major plus for the program.
I think it's great. This announcement today is a big one. You know, we have 53 counties in Georgia that have no mammography screening capacity at all. And so these grants that are going to rural Georgia, 64 of them, are going to go a long way to making access to early detection possible for a whole lot of women in Georgia. So this is a big announcement, and I think the license plate tag, too, will generate a lot of research money.
Other ways to raise money are donations through tax returns and contacting the Georgia Breast Cancer Coalition. For Lawmakers, I'm David Zelski.
Representative Kathy Ash, the one you just saw in the story, is sponsoring the House legislation for the governor.
The chairman of the House Reapportionment Committee says a U.S. District Court judge's decision is not a setback for Georgia's redistricting plans. As we first reported yesterday, Judge Emmett Sullivan in Washington, D.C. is allowing 4 Georgia citizens to intervene in the court case challenging House, Senate, and congressional plans passed by a special session of the General Assembly in September of last year. The 4 Georgians are African American, 2 are Democrats, 2 are Republicans. Their attorney is a Republican. They oppose the racial composition of the proposed districts. Republicans consider this decision a victory. Reapportionment Chairman Representative Tommy Smith says the court just wants to make sure every voice is heard.
The Republicans requested an opportunity to present information before the court, and the judge decided to allow that. We're very pleased that the Department of Justice has approved the plan, said they saw no violation of the Voting Rights Act. And we feel this puts us in a strong position going into the trial. And the judge wanted to allow all the views to be heard, and that's why he allowed the Republicans to have an opportunity to present information that they had.
Judge Sullivan has also postponed the start of the Washington, D.C. redistricting trial. It was scheduled to start Friday. It will now begin on Monday, February the 4th.
Since the 2002 session began, we have been featuring exclusive live interviews with House and Senate leaders. And tonight we are being joined by House Minority Leader Lynn Westmoreland. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Susan.
Let's go ahead and talk about that reapportionment issue. Last night we broke it right here on Lawmakers that minorities in Georgia will get a seat at the table. Again, there are both minority Republicans and Democrats, or excuse me, well, yes, minority Republican and Democrats. Are you calling this a victory?
Well, I think it's a victory for the citizens of Georgia. I mean, for the first time since this process started, the people of Georgia, the citizens of Georgia, are going to have some input in the process. You know, one of the things that we heard traveling around the state was that they didn't want this to be an issue like the flag, where one morning they went to work or school and came home and had a different flag. They wanted to have some input into these maps. And, of course, the way the process went down here, we saw the maps one day, voted on them the next, and the people of Georgia had no input. And I think this is a great victory for the citizens of Georgia, that they're finally getting some input into the say-sos about this map.
We'll be following up on that story as it goes to court next week, but we'd like to move to some other matters. For instance, Hartsfield, right out of the box, Republicans said that they would like to establish or see established a regional airport authority that would govern Hartsfield International Airport. That has Republican support. The bill has been dropped, but so far, have you had any support from Democrats or any inkling from City Hall and Mayor Shirley Franklin in Atlanta that they would be amenable to such a proposal?
Well, we've tried to get in touch with Mayor Franklin, and I know that she's busy right now with the deficit that they've got in Atlanta. But we have had some Democrats talk to us. None want to come out publicly on it. But we feel like that the airport is such an economic engine for Georgia. In the districts I represent, Coweta and Fayette County, there's a strong presence of airline people there. It has a lot of regional impact on Clayton and Fulton. And so we just feel like this authority would make sense. Mayor Franklin said she wanted to give Atlanta a fresh start, and we feel like this would help her. And we do want to help her, but we have not talked to her yet.
Going into the legislative session, Governor Barnes has decided he's going to take a sort of a go low, go slow approach. What advice did you give to the Republican caucus coming into this session? Well,
I told them that we couldn't just get in a fetal position and lay over in a corner. That, you know, regardless if we were in tough economic times or the fact that it was an election year, that we had to go and do our job and work for the people of Georgia and try to carry on business. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Early on in the session, and I don't know if there were actually any signs up that it's the economy stupid, but we were hearing reports like that. Republicans were, if not laying the blame for economic woes at the doorstep of the governor, were indicating that more might have been done in Georgia's economy to salvage things. Democrats have said that that's an unfair charge. Are you still going along those lines, saying the governor is responsible for some of the economic problems?
Well, what we're saying, Gerald, is this, that since Governor Barnes and Mark Taylor have been in office, Georgia has lost about 100,000 jobs. We're saying that over the past 10 years, that our spending has increased 86% in this state, and our population has grown by about 24%. So what we're telling our people and what we believe and what we're telling the people of Georgia, that we don't think we have a revenue problem, we think we've got a spending problem. And if you listen to economists and the report that was put out by ALEC, then they will tell you that the kind of spending that we have done in the past 10 years has not been good.
Any thoughts on the commuter tax personally that you may have?
Well, I think it's I don't like the commuter tax, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think the governor's made that quite clear. And, it's interesting that we have, got some information today to find out that bidders on Atlanta's project, that if you're from outside the city, that you have to make up a 10% or a 5% deficit just depending on your bid. And so the people in Atlanta are willing to pay Atlanta businesses up to 5 or 10% more for some of these contracts. And so, why would they want to charge a commuter tax to the people that go in there and help their economy?
We are out of time. Our thanks to you, House Minority Leader Len Westmoreland, for joining us here on Lawmakers.
Well, thank you all very much.
Recognizing and rewarding. That was the focus today as Governor Barnes introduced legislation that would give some National Guard troops a retirement fund. This announcement came during a proclamation declaring National Guard Day.
A new retirement fund for members of the Georgia National Guard. It would give them a state retirement because most of their service is in state service, in addition to what they would receive on their federal service.
It was a day of celebration for Georgia's National Guard. As part of an incentive to keep soldiers, Governor Barnes introduced House Bill 227, sponsored by Representative Ann Purcell, the legislation would reward citizen soldiers for consecutive years of service.
You have to be in the military for 20 years. Out of that, the 15 years should be with the Georgia National Guard. 10 years of those are consecutive, effective as of the time that you retire. Monetary values will be $50 per month upon retirement, and then for each additional years after that 20 year, the 20 through 30, if you had additional years, it would be $5 per month. So you have a maximum possibility of $100 per month.
General David Porthos says the value of this bill is more than just money.
It's a great symbol. It's a great gesture by the General Assembly and the Governor of support for the Guard. It means a lot more to the Guardsmen than just the money.
They are the men and women behind the lines, fighting for our country. The Army National Guard was one of the first mobilized units sent out after the September 11th attack. Prior to that, troops spent 6 months in Bosnia as part of the NATO peacekeeping mission. But for those men and women, they say it's more than just a job, it's a commitment to our country. The governor reminded private businesses of this commitment, asking them to compensate troops for time lost due to service.
Their salaries may be less than what they were making. We asked them to make some adjustment.
For Georgia's National Guard, that is good news. It allows them to continue their service while still maintaining their income.
We all believe in the promise of this country. It's been good to us, and we feel this is our way to give something back to the country that's been so good to us, and to make sure that it's here tomorrow for our children and grandchildren.
For Lawmakers, I'm Jamie Coran.
The retirement plan is estimated to cost the state of Georgia $500,000.
Advocates of parole for juvenile offenders who were convicted as adults rallied at the Capitol today. Lawmakers Michelle Horton has details.
Founded in 1996, Mothers Advocating Juvenile Justice gathered here at the Capitol today to show their support of House Bill 269. This bill, if passed, would allow juvenile offenders to be eligible for parole after a certain period of time.
The bill would allow juveniles serving adult convictions to be reviewed by a parole board. Good behavior would be rewarded with an early release. Currently, these offenders are required to finish their full sentences. Mothers Advocating Juvenile Justice say that this is not an effective method of reform, simply because juveniles receive very little rehabilitation and education in adult prisons.
I'm here today because my son is incarcerated. He was tried as an adult, and I feel that he shouldn't have been tried as an adult. Although he got caught up in a bad situation, I don't think that made him a bad person to be tried as an adult. I think a lot of juveniles at 13 or 14 or 15, they may consider to be adults, but mentally they are not.
Tyrone Brooks and a spokesman for Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin offered their support of House Bill 269.
That's for the reasons of dealing with punishment. We ought to be about saving our children, rehabilitation, and finding ways to prevent children from ending up in the big prisons. And I think 269 would allow us the opportunity to revisit those laws.
And I'm here today to declare the mayor's firm support behind the passage of House Bill 269. She firmly believes that these children who are being locked away in adult prisons, there should be the possibility of review of their sentence at the earliest possible opportunity.
House Bill 269 seeks to amend existing laws regarding juvenile court jurisdiction and pardons and parole. For Lawmakers, I'm Michelle Horton.
The state's correction departments are considering how to cut their budgets while maintaining public safety. And Wendy Lawson is live at the Capitol Plaza with a look at budget cuts in the Departments of Corrections and Juvenile Justice. And Wendy.
Well, Gerald, managing the 8th largest prison system in the nation, as well as a juvenile justice system that's under federal scrutiny, these are just a few of the tasks of the Departments of Corrections and Juvenile Justice. And when it comes to the budget, sometimes using internal resources can make all the savings in the world.
Inmates save us a lot of money when it comes to running the department. We already have close to $1 billion a year budget, but it'd be a lot more if it were not for the inmate labor that we use. Inmates help us grow all of our vegetables. We have our own cattle herds, our own poultry operation. We bottle our own milk. We do all that, and it costs the taxpayer about $1.60 a day to feed an offender.
Besides cuts to operating expenses, corrections will maintain an 8% personnel vacancy rate instead of the normal 4 to 5%. According to Light, delayed facility openings and postponed training programs don't have to impact the department's mission.
The department has pushed back the opening of some of these facilities, and just for 2 to 5 months. Nothing's major, nothing's going to severely affect the system. We took about $1.5 million out of the budget to reduce our planned expansion of the vocational training program. What we're going to do, though, we don't want to do away with that because we know vocational training is one of the tools to reduce recidivism. We're going to seek outside funding, grant funding, maybe from the federal government or other sources.
Because the majority of adult offenders have juvenile criminal records, Light believes the Departments of Corrections and Juvenile Justice are intimately linked.
Unfortunately, in the past, many of those young offenders keep reoffending and they eventually come into the state prison system as adults. If Orlando and his folks can deal with them on a more effective level, that can slow down the flow of offenders in the state prison system. But one thing you have to remember, too, is the Department of Juvenile Justice deals with kids that have problems after other parts of their lives have failed them.
Like corrections, the Department of Juvenile Justice has focused on personnel cuts and facility costs in creating its budget, holding vacant 42 probation and parole jobs, canceling new shelter beds, and closing a short-term youth detention center program. But Commissioner Martinez says these cuts give the department a chance to better evaluate youth offenders.
We'll have to be better at identifying them and classifying them for the time being. We've been able to work very much more closely with some of the other systems, community systems, and we hope that they'll step up to the plate and be able to take them. We've also have to realistically look at some of the kids that we're even placing in shelter beds maybe didn't need to be there to begin with, and maybe there are things we should be doing in the home.
According to Martinez, the increased salary approved by the legislature a few years ago has helped to attract and retain personnel. Our
turnover rate declined from over 25% 3 years ago to less than 10% today. That's all helpful because it saves you money because you don't have to be retraining people.
And Commissioner Martinez continues working towards his goal of finding alternatives to locking up the juvenile offenders. Recently, the Department of Juvenile Justice actually turned over one of its largest facilities to the Department of Corrections to house adult offenders. Reporting live from the Capitol Plaza, I'm Wendy Lawson for Lawmakers.
And Wendy, going back to corrections for a moment, do the cuts affect the state's ability to expand, build more prisons?
Well, no, actually, according to the Department of Corrections, they are going to be able to keep up with demand and will increase the amount of beds by 2,600 this year alone.
Okay, and Wendy, thank you very much.
Governor Roy Barnes announces his 2002 education reform legislation tomorrow afternoon. That takes place at Drew Charter School in Atlanta. And Wendy Lawson is going to have coverage on Lawmakers tomorrow night. And on Thursday of this week, the governor is meeting up with President Bush, who is in town to drive home parts of his State of the Union address that he is delivering tonight. The president and the governor are going to meet at an Atlanta high school specifically to highlight the president's Teach for America program. I'll be there to cover the event, and we'll have details on Thursday on Lawmakers.
And we will soon know who will replace Sonny Perdue in the state Senate. Perdue, a Republican, resigned his 18th district seat to campaign for governor. Attorneys Jay Walker and Michael Moore win a runoff election held today in Houston County. The polls closed at 7 p.m. We'll let you know the results of that special election tomorrow night.
2 years ago, Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor spearheaded Senate Bill 318, which allowed the state to run DNA screenings on convicted felons. The bill passed and has paid off by bringing over 80 convicts to justice. Now, with Senate Bill 333, the Lieutenant Governor would like to see the statute of limitations eliminated for certain crimes. Lawmakers' David Zelski is live from the Capitol with more on this. David.
Well, in an afternoon press conference, the Lieutenant Governor was joined by Fulton County District Attorney Paul Howard and Ted Staples of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Along with words of support for Senate Bill 333, they announced some recent advancements in DNA-aided investigations.
We are proud that crime is down for 8 consecutive years in Georgia. We're proud that we have the toughest violent crime laws in the nation. I appreciate District Attorney Howard's support of Senate Bill 333, which was assigned to committee yesterday to do away with the statute of limitations on 7 very serious violent crimes in Georgia. And at this time, I want to present to you Fulton County's DA, my friend, District Attorney Paul Howard, who has a very significant announcement. District Attorney.
I would like to announce that a Fulton County grand jury on today returned 2 separate indictments against Tommy C. Wright. Mr. Wright was indicted in one indictment for the October 29th, 2001 murder of Erica Thompson. Ms. Thompson was a resident of East Point. Also on today, the same grand jury returned an indictment against Tommy Wright for the April 10th, 1999 rape of a woman also who lived in East Point. The incident that occurred on April 10th of 1999 was discovered through the use of the DNA data bank at the GBI. And without the GBI's data bank, we would not have been able to make the connection and return an indictment in this case.
Now, this particular rape and burglary was solved within 4 years. Now, under current law, the statute of limitations would have ended this investigation after 7 years, regardless if there was a capture or not. In Senate Bill 333, there would be no time limit on violent crimes involving the 7 deadly sins. Reporting live from the Capitol, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
David, has there been a need for additional funding for these investigations?
Well, like most other state organizations, cutbacks were at 2.5%, but the lieutenant governor assured that these would not affect DNA screenings or related GBI investigations.
All right, thanks very much, David. Also today, the House defeats a measure designed to get rid of rundown homes and businesses. Today, House Majority Leader Larry Walker offered a constitutional amendment that would allow local governments to adjust the millage rate on property to encourage owners to clean it up. There were several questions. One was from Representative Fran Miller, who wanted further clarification. Take a look.
Basically, what this bill does, it gives the local jurisdictions some flexibility with their millage rate, doesn't it, at the end of the day? I mean, they can do the rest of this. All it says is if we got blighted property, you're going to pay the piper, and if you fix it, we're going to give you a break. So basically it allows them the flexibility to adjust the millage rate, which they do not have now. Is that correct?
You should have come down here and explained the bill. I think you'd have done better than I've done. Thank you.
Some Republicans spoke out against the proposed constitutional amendment. The first was Representative Bobby Franklin, who thought it would unfairly hurt elderly widows unable to care for their homes. Representative Brian Joyce thought the measure was bad for taxpayers. Here's Franklin, then Joyce.
Do we want to kick widows out of their homes? I don't think so. Let's take a hard look at this, and as Mr. Walker said, there already is a condemnation procedure. It is a high hurdle. Let's keep that hurdle high to protect the widows in the state of Georgia.
Folks, if this isn't meddling in local business, and I don't know what is, okay? And it's going to come back to bite you if you vote for this. I'll tell you that. This is not a taxpayer-friendly bill. It is not a taxpayer-friendly bill.
Representative Walker did get some support for his measure from Republican Jeff Brown from LaGrange, but it wasn't enough to garner the two-thirds majority vote needed to pass a constitutional amendment. The measure was lost. The vote was 114 to 49. Representative Walker is planning to push for reconsideration on the vote. We'll let you know what happens.
Hispanics are the fastest growing minority group in Georgia, and in 2002, they're working hard to increase their presence at the Gold Dome and gain lawmakers' attention. Hamilton Northcutt joins us live now with a report on the first ever Hispanic Legislative Day at the Capitol. Hamilton.
Well, Gerald, census figures show that Georgia's Hispanic population has increased over 300% just in the past decade. Today, Governor Roy Barnes said that it's important for government and business leaders to recognize the impact that Hispanics have on the state's economy.
Georgia has grown dramatically in the last decade due to the fact that more Hispanics are deciding to make Georgia their home. Now, this is just a part of the reason that our state has been able to expand and diversify our economy as well. The number of Hispanic businesses in Georgia has increased annually by 15 to 18%. And the strong Hispanic business community presence in our state has helped many other sectors in our economy.
Sectors such as construction, food processing, and the hospitality industry. Representative Mary Hodges Squires wants the federal government to allow guest worker visas in these three categories and cut down on the number of illegal immigrants working in Georgia.
I think that the construction industry, the hospitality industry, and the food service industry will be happy with this, that they will be delighted to have legal employees and that there won't be any bribery scandals and there won't be any other scandals that they are in trouble for. They need workers. Our economy in Georgia needs this. We need the workers. And so we've decided to go forth and do what we think will make the workers who are here stay here and be able to have all the benefits of residency.
Currently, an estimated 200,000 illegal immigrants work in construction, the hospitality industry, and food processing in Georgia. Reporting live from the Capitol Plaza, I'm Hamilton Northcutt for Lawmakers.
Now, Hamilton, I know another hot issue involving Hispanics is giving Georgia driver's license to illegal aliens who do have a license from Mexico, Canada, or any other neighboring state.
Well, that's true, and it was Representative Squires' idea, but today she backed away from that proposal and said that instead she wants Congress to tackle the issue of undocumented workers. Okay, thank you very much, Hamilton.
Some Georgia lawmakers are concerned about the safety of drivers talking on their cell phones. Lawmakers Chrissy Knight has our story.
This is not an unusual image throughout Georgia, drivers engaging in conversation on cellular phones. While this practice has become an everyday occurrence, Georgia lawmakers want to put restrictions on the use of mobile phones while driving. 2 bills were introduced last week dealing with cell phone usage. Both bills would make talking on a cell phone while driving illegal unless the driver uses a hands-free device.
That means that if drivers are caught talking on a handheld cell phone like this one, that they could be fined up to $100. If the bill passes, drivers will be required to talk on a hands-free device like this earpiece instead.
But there are usually exceptions to every rule. If a driver makes an emergency phone call, for example calling a hospital, on a handheld phone, then that person would not be fined. Representative Barbara Mobley is a sponsor of House Bills 335 and 1093.
The reason I'm sponsoring the bill is because it is a public safety issue. People have come to legislators and said to us, look, something has to be done about these people holding these cell phones and making it a more dangerous place for us to drive. And so that's the reason the bill was put out. And so as time has gone, we have gotten an increased number of legislators to come forward to say they now support it.
Mobley also said that the bill would mirror the cell phone laws in New York.
One thing we're looking at to increase the support is the possibility of having a committee substitute that would basically mirror the law that was passed in the state of New York. And it would add some softness to the bill, and it would allow people who are ticketed within the first so many days to show up in court with some proof that they have purchased hands-free equipment.
If the bills pass, Georgia will join several other states, including California, Florida, Massachusetts, and New York, who already practice cell phone restrictions. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Chrissy Knight.
And coming up tomorrow, Governor Barnes announces education legislation, and the Sierra Club joins forces with other community activists to rally at the Capitol. We'll have all the details of tomorrow's editions of Lawmakers. And for those of you with access to the Internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Visit our website at gpb.org. Lawmakers programs are streamed live and then archived on that site every night that we're on the air. Now stay tuned as Georgia Outdoors takes you on a journey down the Kawasaga River. That's next here on GPTV.
And that is our broadcast for the 7th legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. Thanks for watching. I'm Susan Hoffman.
I'm Gerald Bryant. For everyone here, good night.
Good night.